I love that. I love that. Twice the guilt. Oh God! Now why isn't Nextcloud loading up? Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
When I was getting ready to go into what you would call primary school, my mom wanted to put me in a Lutheran school, so they went and talked to the headmaster, whatever they call him, and he told her that if I would have died at birth, I would have went to hell for original sin. And Mom marched me out of there and put me in public school.
You'd have gone to purgatory, technically, which is a portion of hell. But
not good for people that don't even know how to speak yet.
Isn't that a Catholic thing, though? Because isn't it
like
that Protestants don't believe in purgatory?
Lutheran is Catholic with half the ceremony and twice the guilt.
Okay. Fine. Okay, I have a feeling that it's my turn to host. Is that right? Have I got that wrong?
The only thing about that mic you got there,
agree with you.
That mic you got there, Majid, you're going to have to stay choked up on it pretty good, because it's picking up.
Stay choked up on it pretty good, man.
There it is.
Yeah, get real friendly with it.
Yeah, make love. We are
and then turn your gain down just a little bit.
You sorry?
Give me
turn your gain down a little bit.
Okay.
Where's the gain button?
Yeah, you'll have to do it in I about said Windows. In the desktop.
Are you using Windows right now, Bill?
Mm-mm.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
No, because if I did, everything would be working.
What about now?
That's better. Yeah.
Sounds real good.
All right, I'm going to do a 3, 2, 1. Give me 20 seconds, guys, if you don't mind. 3, 2.
I do mind, actually.
That's what she said.
Not necessary, but here we go. Yeah, and the only purpose for that is if I have to use the OBS recording, then it has to be filtered.
Thumbs up to Majid's torch.
All right, then.
No, you can get a cheapo ring light.
Yes, I probably could, actually. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 482, recorded on Sunday, March 29th, 2026.
Still no kings in America. I'm Joe.
Lost in the crowd, I'm Bill.
Samsungless, I'm Majid.
Wishful thinking, I'm Charles.
Down with Markdown, I'm Jim.
So, first up in the news, the fight against enshittification starts. In security and privacy, shock horror, the Chinese government spies on you. Then in our wanderings, Joe rambles, Bill drives himself crazy, I actually have some fun, Charles is Charles, and Jim explores notes apps. Finally, with the feedback and a couple of suggestions. Remember, if you want to follow along with our discussions, the full show notes for this episode are linked in the show's description at mintcast.org/show notes. Okay, then, go ahead, Charles. Tell us about this news article.
Thank you, Majid. Yes, I came across this from the registry. It was posted March 6th this year by reporter Liam Provin. Anyway, Norway's Consumer Council takes aim at enshittification. It's a wide. Its aim is wide, covering everything from social networks to Gen AI. And we all know that enshittification is ruining our lives as things, but basically they put out a 100-page report, which is in the link in the show notes there. And the report is inspired by Cory Doctorow on the topic, uses accessible language, humor, and a companion video, a day in the life of an enshittificator, to explain the issue. And I did watch the video. It's funny, it's creative, it's to the point, it's plain, easy to follow, and everybody, I mean, everybody can relate to it. Because if you use any services or software or anything, you will definitely be in touch with it. And anyway, like I said, it just some of the highlights: report examines and shitification in the area like social media, Meta, TikTok, streaming services, aka Netflix, connected devices, smart homes, cards, video games, digital ownership, printers, and Microsoft browsers. Anyway, it highlights concerns about renting access to digital goods instead of owning them. I think Jim talked about that a couple months ago. And the power imbalance between the consumer and big tech. And yeah, and then it says the next frontier is generative AI has identified the next frontier for enshittification, which farther exploitation and control in our lives, and um, just another way to continually suck revenue out of our consumers. But anyway, like I said, there's a link in the show notes, and it has the video, and spread it around to your friends, and maybe someday we could start to get some traction on what's happening here. And just to follow up on this, I don't know if any of you guys listened to was it 2.5 Admins as Jim Salter a couple of weeks ago. He was a real life current situation. So he owns an IT consulting company, and one of his customers, the Microsoft 365 admin, broke his phone, and he was not able to get back into the administrator console. And when they tried to contact Microsoft support, they sent him a link to, oh, go in, reset the password, it'll send you a pin to your phone and you can get back in. And he went round and around and around with the support people telling him nobody else has access to the in Microsoft 365 admin except this individual user. He didn't have a backup authentication device. We need you to reset the admin system so that somebody else can get into it. And he said he'd been going around this about 2 weeks, and he said normally when he's had this problem before, if you call support at Microsoft, he says it's not Microsoft, it's outsourced to somebody else. Big surprise there. And this woman that he got a hold of kept trying to tell him, let me log into your computer so I can show you how to do this. And she just couldn't grasp the concept that the person that has access, his phone is destroyed. He can't get to his phone, and there's no other way. I need you to reset the admin console. But anyway, it just shows. And as he said, he'd been in this loop for about 2 weeks, and he hadn't put an update on it. But anyway, it was just again another story about enshittification. He said most of the time when you contact Microsoft, you end up in these chats or just automatic replies for an issue that they think you're having. He said normally he calls the accounting people and they'll answer the phone, and they've been through this, and they'll normally just reset the password, but or the admin. But this particular they weren't doing that. So anyway, like I said, just another justification. So on
Well,
that.
I can say it's not just Microsoft, it's every other company out there that they've been given a canned list of steps to go down with people, and they have no idea when you deviate from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I called up, I've got Frontier Fios fiber wireless here in the house. Prior to upgrading the service, I had a box. When I had like a lesser, just residential service, I had a box hanging from one of the floor joists, and I had some trouble at one point, and I call up their tech support, if you could see my fingers, and of course, it would have, "Hello, thank you for calling tech support. My name is Kyle. How can I help you today?"
I'm insulted.
And I'm like, "Okay, Kyle, here's what I got going on." And the guy is telling me, "Will you please check the battery for me? There's no battery." "Okay, can you let me?" Okay, click, 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 click. You know, the fake keyboard sound. "Okay, can you please check the battery for me?" This went over and over and over, and I kept telling him.
So, which part of Ireland does this guy come from?
I need to know, because I'm not going to go down that road. It was just this over and over and over, and he would trade me off to somebody else who was equally as inept. And what they wanted me to do was to check the power or the charge level on the battery. And there was indeed a battery bay on this box, a place for the battery to go. But as I kept telling them, there was no battery in it. But they could not. All I needed them to do was, "Okay, there's no battery. Let's go on to the next step." But they would not do. They could not grasp the idea that there was no battery. So finally, I just had to schedule a technician to come out. And indeed, the box itself needed to be. I don't know what the box was, because you don't have a concept of like a router and modem with that. It was whatever they call the device that takes the fiber and then turns it into Ethernet signal.
SFP.
There used to be a
SFP.
comedy. Yeah, there used to be a comedy show in the UK called Little Britain in the early 2000s, and one of the sketch was it in Little Britain or was it in the Catholic? Anyway, early 2000s, and there was a sketch of a woman basically at a computer, and whenever anybody asks her a difficult question, she just goes, "Computer says nah." You know, like somebody would come in and say, you know, can I put my passport in? And I'd be like, "Computer says nah." Do you know what I mean? And that I said that was 25 years ago, and it's just like we are now living. This is the thing, isn't it? We're now living in a bad comedy. Do you know what I mean? That's not satirical.
It's always fun though when you're dealing with those people with the scripts, and then you stump them and they pass you on to the next person, and that person starts at the beginning of the script again, the exact same script.
Yeah.
And then they get stumped at the exact same spot, and then they will repeat instead of like working out that, okay, this step is a moot point. They will just keep repeating as though you don't know, which to be fair, I would imagine maybe even more often than not, the people on the other end, like myself, don't know what they're talking about, don't know what they're looking at. And so maybe in some way it's appropriate or whatnot, but we suffer, because
I still remember, like, oh gosh, it's got to be almost 20 years ago now, talking to Time Warner Cable on the phone and telling them about an issue that I was having. I don't remember the issue. But as soon as I told them I'm not running Windows, they were like, "Well, we can't help you then."
Oh yeah, I've had that. I've run into that. I do notice since switching to the business account with Frontier, I actually call a number and I get a local tech support call center. They treat their business customers exceptionally well in relation to how they treat their residential customers. And I get somebody 24 hours a day. I'll get somebody actually answering the phone. It's $13 more to have a business account, and I got to say that's the best $13 you could spend for your internet service if it's that important to you. But we suffer that.
Did you have to prove that you were a small business or something? Or just willing to pay the price?
Just pay the extra.
They just charge you extra, and you get. That's what I had to do in order to get a static IP address so that I could run these servers.
Got it. Okay, 'cause it used to be residential back in the day. Again, 15, 20 years ago, they wouldn't let you do that. So, but anyway.
Yeah, and I'm sure they just kind of came to the realization that, well, sometimes they want static IP addresses. This is just a quick and easy way to flip a switch and make $13 more a month, you know?
Yeah. And depending on the carrier and where you live too. So that
Yeah.
but again, I'm referencing like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Anywho, moving on. Charles, you have something in security and privacy as well. Do tell.
Do tell, big surprise here. Our Chinese friends have, I think this issue came up from back after 9/11. They passed that law where the government insisted on having a backdoor into the telecom so they could monitor and keep America safe in the war on terror. You know, unlike kind of similar to the war on protecting our children. Anyway,
Yeah. Won't someone think of their children? Sorry.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, and this has been long known that there's the Chinese are in our telecom networks, and the telecom providers have basically said, "Oh, there's nothing we can do about it. It's just the way it is." Well, you know, which is fine. And as we know, when there are backdoors into things, what could possibly go wrong? It's kind of like wanting backdoors into encryption. Again, what could possibly go wrong? And this is a perfect example of it. But anyway, over the years here, this flaw in where the Chinese have gotten in has, you know, gotten even more sophisticated. Um, you know, a couple of the highlights of it: it's stealth and persistent. It's called the BPF door. You know, it operates within the Linux kernel. It has a targeted expansion, and it even has things like HTTPS cloaking. The malware now hides activation commands within normal HTTPS traffic. And it has another feature called precise triggering, literally monitors the 26 byte of an HTTPS request for activation phrase, minimizing the detection risk. Anyway, this thing is really sophisticated, really can do some nasty stuff. But anyway,
Is
yeah.
this
So I thought
the precursor to the router ban?
I'm not familiar with that one. I
Oh,
think this
oh,
is
all routers made outside of America are no longer allowed to be sold in America. All the parts have to be made here. But
no. This
there,
is this
okay,
no this
I'll get into it
yeah.
next show on the details on that because there's a lot of addendums and exceptions there. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is just a continuation of when the Chinese got into the back door that the government wanted access because they said, "Oh, we'll only use it, you know, the bad guys can't exploit it." And of course, the Chinese did, and here we are. So that's
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah,
So anyway,
I think it still is the reason we put the ban into place, but I'll look
okay.
more into it and do my research for the new show in 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, Leo Laporte was at a RSA conference and he went up to talk to some vendor, I can't remember who it was, and to ask that question, says, "We're not talking about that. We have no comment." And I can't remember what one of the vendors routers. Anyway, so yeah, I think there's one manufacturer that makes stuff here, and I can't remember which one it was. So it should be interesting to see how that goes. Anyway, so that's
Cool.
what's happening with that. And again, there's a link in the show notes, and it's on darkreading.com.
Yeah.
So,
Nice one. Okay then. So now we're on to that fantastic time. The Wanderings. Go on, Bill.
Yeah, oh, well, let's see. What's occupied my time these last few days? Okay, so I was down at the 2026 Mid-America Trucking Show in Louisville, Kentucky. I went down there on Wednesday. I actually started working on my birthday, Sunday, so that I could get some time in so that I wouldn't have a...
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
75?
Yeah, 53.
Okay.
So I go down to Texas, deliver, race all the way back. I haven't had sleep in a week and a half. and then go down to Louisville. And we had a nice booth set up down there, and interviewed a lot of great people. It was fun. For those that don't know, that particular truck show is the biggest in that hemisphere, if not maybe the world, because people fly in from. We interviewed a guy from England. We've interviewed people from Australia. People fly from Australia to go to this thing, and that is a heck of an undertaking.
Is there a main theme that typically happens at these shows, or do they have all?
Well, I
kinds
mean,
of
it's a trade
technology
show, but it's just the largest one in the trucking industry. I mean,
Got it.
you've got every single facet of the industry is there, selling their wares and talking about what they've got. And then there's a lot of show trucks, real fancy looking trucks and classic trucks and things like that. And then they have a concert Friday night, and there's a dinner and things like that. And contests for the trucks. It's something to see, even if you're not into trucking. I was interested in a lot of the new tech that's coming out. Even the headsets, some of the new headsets that are coming out that have AI built into them. You'll love it, Joe.
Of course they do.
And I said, okay, you got to tell me what you need AI in a headset for, because I'm leaning away from that. He said, well, because
To annoy you.
he was saying it was because the way the Bose noise canceling headsets work is that they're using a cloud server. This thing is connected to an app on your phone, and it's getting a lot of that stuff from the cloud, whereas this is doing everything in software right there, or in firmware actually, right there in the headset. So all the data that it needs is right
Well,
there.
That's
doesn't
one
make a
giant
whole
step
lot
from the
of
cloud to
sense.
localize. So
Yeah.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm
Whatever.
telling you, because what active noise canceling has been around for quite a while now, probably longer than
You
AI
know
has
that,
been around.
and I know that, but the 10,000
that
people
was-
that walked past his booth didn't really have a huge. And to be honest with you, I'm not interested in. I'm interested in noise canceling, but only in the talking part. Like if I'm talking into the microphone, I want it to block out the engine noise, and that, because there is a lot of ambient noise in the cab, that needs to be blocked out. And Blue Parrot headsets have been doing that really, really well for a long time. These things
Oh
were
yeah,
not.
I love it.
Yeah, these things though they're not exorbitantly expensive. I think their top of the line one that's got all that AI stuff built into it was $159, which is kind of on par really with a mid-grade Blue Parrot and whatnot. But I had a lot of fun talking to people there. Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, one of Trump's guys, he was there, and that blew everybody's mind, because you know the type of people that I'm surrounded by. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that. Okay, so also recently I decided I was going to switch up my Focusrite Solo, which is the audio interface that I'd been using to make these shows. I bought a Vocaster, Focusrite Vocaster, which is an interface that's made more for podcasters. It's got a bit more of a better interface for people that are just going to use it to make podcasts and things, and not necessarily musical type inputs. It's got nothing to plug a guitar into it and whatnot, and it's got a little bit better enhancement technology to handle your voice a little bit better and block out the other noises and whatnot. So I'm giving that a try. I've just recently got support for it in the kernel, because there's a project out there that's been kind of iterating steadily over the last few years called ALSA Scarlet GUI, which is basically a reverse engineered GUI tool that connects directly with ALSA, the Linux sound architecture. And it works really well, but support for the Vocaster was kind of slow coming because there's a lot of proprietary stuff going on inside it. Well, he's got that all up and running now, and it had been up and running, but not available in Mint because I needed a more up-to-date kernel version to take advantage of it. And recently we've gotten that update, and I was happy to be able to plug this thing in and try it. It's been sitting over on my shelf for 2 years. I've also, in the past, in order to give me a little bit more gain on the microphone, I'd been using what's called a FETHEAD, FETHEAD, which is kind of it's a device that sort of boosts your gain a little bit so that you don't have to crank your audio interface up all the way. It gives you that boost without having to do that, without also bringing in more outside noise, like my furnace running and my heaters blowing and all that stuff, you know. But what started to happen, and I still haven't really nailed down why, they started to pick up a radio station because they basically boost whatever signal they get, and it started picking up a radio station that I could hear well enough to understand the words that they were saying, and they put out their call signal at one point, and I thought, well, that ain't cool. And I've got the Mogami XLR cables, which are arguably the best. I hope so, because a 10-foot section of this stuff is about $80 for an XLR cable, which is ridiculous. But you know me. And I was still picking up that signal, and then of course I'd look it up, and when they get a little bit dusty or whatever, they'll start to pick up other signals. But it seemed to be an ongoing problem, so I thought I would try the Cloud Lifter, which is a bit more of a robust device. It's a lot bigger. It's a blue box, and this thing is probably about 6 times bigger than a FETHEAD, but it plugs in between your microphone and your audio interface, and it does the same thing, but I think it does it in a bit more powerful of a way, and that's what I've got hooked up right now, and I've barely got any gain turned up on this thing, and it's coming in nice and clear, so I'm kind of happy with that. And I found a pretty good deal on it. Usually these things are about $150. I got it for $99.99 because it was a B unit, they call it, where it might have some scratches on it or whatnot. I've not been able to find anything wrong with it. What else?
So are you one quick question. So you're saying once you went to the XLR cable and this other device, you're not picking up that radio station anymore?
Once I undid the FETHEAD.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was that FETHEAD. A FETHEAD is just, I can show you one. It's basically, it's got the female XLR. For those of you in the audio only, go check out the YouTube. It's about that big, about half the length of a cigar, and you plug in the female in this end and the male in the other. You want this as close to the microphone as possible, because what it's going to do is it's going to boost every signal it gets, and then it goes into the audio interface. So if you plugged it directly into the audio interface, you would be boosting like electrical noise and background noise, whatnot, that the cable is picking up all the way from the mic. So you want this as close to the mic. In fact, if you go to the website, most people have them plugged directly into the mic and then the cable into that. The way I do it is I've got a short section of XLR coming out of the mic, and then the cloud lifter is plugged into that, and then the longer cable is plugged into the back of the cloud lifter. Then the same with one of these things. These things aren't really cheap either. They're anywhere from $79 to $99, depending on what kind. This one is the most expensive one, the germanium, and it's mostly for if you need really loud, kind of punchy sound. I don't think it works real well. It doesn't really give you a kind of a smooth broadcaster sound, which is what I usually try to go for. That's what this is, the Fethead transformer, and that's what I was going for with that. But we'll give this cloud lifter a try and see how it goes. It's arguably more. It's a big old thing sitting on top of the arm. You can't see it in the video, but it's a big old thing sitting on top of the arm for the microphone. It is what it is. At the truck show, we decided this truck show was going to be the first one we were going to use a different type of camera system. What we had tried to do in the past is just hook up. Between Dave and I, we've probably got 13 of the Logitech C920s and 930s, and we were trying to, with one computer, hook up 4 or 5 of those things and have them positioned in certain ways throughout the booth, and then switch from them. The problem we ran into, so if you take a machine the way it is, you've got one USB controller on the motherboard of that machine. You're going to get maybe 2 cameras out of that tops. You put another USB controller in it, and in theory, you should get 2 or 3 more cameras hooked up to it. But in practice, it's just never worked. We would hook up the cameras
on a laptop.
No. At first we tried with a laptop. That just plain didn't work. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to build a machine and then I bought a couple of these expensive, these USB cards that have their own controller on them, and they actually hook up to a X16 PCIe slot. These things were not cheap. And they say they've got the USB 3.2 speed to them, which is way more than enough. In theory, I should have been able to hook up 10 cameras to this thing without it falling flat on its face. But in reality, when we're at the show, I have to use extension cable, which I have. I have very high speed USB extension cables. It doesn't matter. We try to do it, and it just falls flat on its face. So we end up having to basically boil the show down to 1 or 2 cameras, and then it's not fluid. It doesn't look very well because we're sitting in a row, and we might have a guest sitting in the middle of the table, and we want to be able to switch between views. Well, the only way to achieve this in a meaningful manner is to use a proper professional camera switcher, but those work with HDMI. And if you try that with a bunch of C920s with HDMI capture cards, you get lag out of every single camera, and there's no way to properly compensate for it. So we decided to buy a bunch of these small Mocos cameras. They're about $140 a piece. They're small, but they're HDMI. And the other problem with HDMI camera is it needs its own separate power. So now we've got 2 cords running up the tripod or the whatever we've got it mounted on. But with this device, and this camera switcher was not cheap either. That was a $500 piece of kit, and the software for it only runs on Windows. And the software, I only need that software to do one thing, and that's to change the default output, which it's kind of convoluted to explain, but it's got 2 different outputs. It's got an HDMI output, and then it's got what it calls a webcam output, which is basically the output coming out of the USB, which is what you need when you're running OBS Studio to do all your recording and whatnot. Well, by default, it wants to send the program signal, which is what you are wanting to record. It's sending that out the HDMI, and it's sending out this director's panel thing, which I don't even use, out the USB. So I've got to get, and the only way to do this is with this stupid little piece of software that you got to download and then go to the settings and change that. And this is every time you plug this thing in, it goes back to default. It does not save the setting. So that's why I have to use Windows when I'm at the. I actually use the Surface Pro that I bought off of Moss like a year ago or so, maybe not quite a year ago. Last summer, I think I bought that off him and use Windows, and wouldn't you know it, everything works great. I don't have to worry about any of it. So that's how we kind of. It's less convoluted. Instead of having a full machine in front of me to manage all this stuff, I've got a Surface Pro. So I don't know. Is it any less convoluted? I suppose not. But it's kind of nice to have something when you go and people are waiting for an interview to just have it working the first time, you know. But I think if I didn't have to change that setting every time I fired this thing up, I would be able to use Linux, because it's just it's doing all the processing it needs for the camera and then sending it off to OBS Studio. But since I need to change that setting every single time we plug it in, then there it is. That device is called the Blackmagic ATEM switcher for HDMI cameras, and it's a professional piece of kit, so it's got a professional price tag on it. Anyway, that's all I got. What about you, Joe?
Well, I was looking up those Mocos cameras, and those are pretty cool.
Yeah, they've got excellent picture,
I've seen those
and
before.
it's got settings. It's got some settings in it for the for everything from the exposure to the shutter and everything like that.
Well, I see it takes a specialty USB cable, but I think the ones you're talking about, the $150 4K ones, can also do USB to a computer.
Well, these ones that I'm using, let me see.
They also have the HDMI output, but you can. It looks like one of the configurations shows that it can use straight USB.
Let me see, because the ones I've got only have a HDMI port on them. I guess I'll share a link to this in the.
Does it have the USB-A port next to the HDMI port?
No.
Okay. Because those are the ones I'm looking at for $152.50 right now.
I'll go ahead and drop the link in the.
Perfect. Check this out.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were talking about those SFPs earlier, and I know I'm thinking about buying one, but I would also have to get another network switch that takes SFP. I have one. I need one more. And because they make a specific SFP that will emulate the AT&T fiber router or modem, excuse me. So I can pull their equipment out and set that over to the side and have it all on stuff that I own, as opposed to having their modem in place. So that's a future project if I get extra money.
Yeah, I just put a link in the public channel on the Discord and
I
on
will check that
our
out.
private general channel. That's the one I went with. They actually come with a pretty fancy telephoto lens on it, but that can be switched out for a tinier, simpler lens, which is what I did. And those only cost like $6 or $7 because the thing about these telephoto lenses is you can zoom them all the way out and it's still just a bit too close for what we needed, but with just the cheap lens we got a perfect picture on it. Okay, see this? Yeah.
This is the one I was looking at for the price range you were talking about. Let me see the one you were talking about, because they have a whole page on our whole storefront on Amazon with some cool stuff there. So I was just looking at the one that was USB and HDMI, and yeah, I see the one that you're talking about is only HDMI and 12-volt power.
And yeah, because it just USB isn't for what we needed. We need at least 4 cameras, and
Right, I was just looking at something that did both, because it will also do the
right.
HDMI.
I'll show.
And you know, Jim keeps telling me I need to upgrade my camera quality, so
I think lighting is your problem more than the camera.
well, I got really good lighting in here.
Of course, that's
It doesn't cost anything to center yourself in the frame, so there isn't a big, huge gap between the top of your head and the ceiling.
it bounced right back
A
up.
little better.
Oh, you want me to bring it down more? So hold on.
That's better.
That is
Significantly
better.
better.
Here's the Black Magic device, and it has come down in price. I see. That's good for everybody else.
Majid's the worst offender now, but that's not
Yeah.
for nothing.
He wants to make sure we see everybody coming in
$345.
that door.
All right. On to my stuff, my actual stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I did take some time off from doing intense projects, and the mini rack there was pretty stable for a little while, and kind of boring. I've started trimming some of the unneeded items that were on there, some of the images, some of the containers, and I'm looking for new things to try out on it. But in the meantime, I've done some other small, simple stuff. I pulled out the Skull Candy Crushers and finally reprinted a bunch of hinges and got them all back into production again, including the one that I had previously modified to make more comfortable with larger ear cups. I also fixed some of those very cheap mods that I had been doing before. That when I was looking for replacements for the neckband LGs, since they're getting harder and harder to get. Just a simple solder job to get things connected properly. Now I have several of them ready to go. Varying battery durations, but all of them with decent sound, since I put the MMCX connections on them so that I can use quality drivers. I also put into place the prints for the mini rack that I had discussed last time, replacing the top plate with a narrower one that was significantly thicker so that it will not sag when I have the mini monitor mounted to the top. I also put into place the keystone panel for the back in the leftover space, but I think I will probably move it a little bit lower in the rack so that the Ethernet cables are not coming out of the very top. This may be easier to do if I swap out the power supply for a small form factor one, the one that's driving the hard drives, instead of a full-sized ATX power supply. I have 2 different of the smaller form factor power supplies that I think would do well right there, and it'll save a lot of space and a lot of cabling. Finally had an actual issue with the Elegoo Centauri Carbon. Well, it's not really an issue. After 8 months, it was time to replace the nozzle. I probably waited a little bit too long for it. The old nozzle, I guess, got a little bit too worn out, and ended up with plastic all over the hot end. It was quicker and easier just to pull off the whole hot end and replace it with a spare, than to go back after and clean up the old hot end with a lighter and a pick. Or at least I thought. The nozzle did not want to come off after I swapped it out. And then ended up snapping one of the connections while removing the 4 millimeter nozzle. I did order a new backup that comes with different size nozzles, though, and I'll eventually give the 0.6 a try. Still, I think that considering how much printing I have done with this machine and the time that I've had it, that the nozzle lasted a really long time. I mean, I haven't done any exotic materials or anything, but still, I've done PLA, ABS, PETG, PLAF. It is time for me to try out some TPU, and I've done some multicolor printing using the auto pause feature and the resume feature. Just 2 colors, but I did that so that I could print a new no soliciting sign for my front door, which I know won't actually stop the solicitors, but maybe next time if I 3D print a no soliciting sign with a 357 at the bottom of it, they'll get the idea and leave me alone.
I notice anything with a picture of a gun on it will keep a certain class of individual away. I've got one on my side door that says this. It's got a picture of a 357, and it says this door is locked for your protection, not mine.
Yeah. And I should also mention that with the carbon, that I am having to restart it rather often and make sure that I run a level every time I print something. So I might be looking at needing a new main board here in the near future. It's not all that surprising considering, how much I've printed and that it was basically turned on for 8 months. Yeah. My mini rack, like I said, was stable and running nonstop for 33 whole days. It was kind of cool. But then the controller went out on the mini PC again, the SATA controller. First one of the drives started throwing errors, but did not have any fixes required when I ran it through FSCK. Then on restart, it did not see any of the drives. Then I let it sit for a while and restarted again, and the drives came back. But one was read-only. Then another couple of restarts where none of the drives were seen, and then one where just that one drive was not seen. I should mention that this started after I tried out a long test with the 2.5G Ethernet connections with a large volume data move. So my assumption is that it is causing heat issues. I could solve this by buying another one of the controllers and setting things into place so that I can add a fan, which is what I'm going to end up doing. But I think that I thought that I might have a better chance using an adapter to PCIe X4 and then a PCIe SATA adapter. With long cables, I will also be able to have the controller outside of that PC case for easier cooling and much easier replacement. Plus, I can always upgrade to a better controller or more ports later on. I'm keeping an eye on a 10-port one, but right now I have a PCI X4 5-port controller that I might end up using. And I'll just move that 4 terabyte one back to the garage PC and split the 8 TB that has the VMs on it into 2 so that I can move image and audio bookshelf files onto that, on one side of that. Also, if I do the upgrade to the 10-port in the future, I'll be able to add in those 2.5-inch drives that I have sitting around doing nothing. That and the adapter that I designed and printed to hold them. But if this external controller does not work, I have my eyes on a mini ITX board with built-in dual 2.5G Ethernet ports and 8 SATA ports. But I would need to 3D print a shelf for it. It already has a low-profile fan, and if the 8 ports aren't enough, I do have that 5-port PCIe and a riser cable. Plus, I already have the ATX power supply in place, and at $179, yeah, it's more than I want to spend, but it would definitely fix the controller problems that I've been having. I just wanted to do it with parts I can pick up easily and cheaply, and it kind of feels like cheating just, buying a board specifically for that. I'm sure it would have, new problems of its own and interesting things to happen with it, but still. Then, after I ordered and received those new parts, the PCIe adapter, or the M.2 to PCIe, and then the PCIe extender, after that, the old controller started working correctly again. So what I'm going to end up doing, probably right after the show, is moving it from the second position on the rack to the top position on the rack, and then using that small 40 millimeter fan that I grabbed out of that, DVR, and I have a SATA power to 4-pin adapter that I will hook up to that, and I'll mount it to the top of the case right above the SATA adapter, the SATA to M.2 adapter, or M.2 to SATA adapter, and have it pull heat directly off of there and see how it works going forward. Now, I also 3D printed a couple of small things. I had 3D printed another rail for the mini rack that I was hoping to use to mount the SATA controller to. I also printed a new spring clip for one of my bags because the old one had snapped. A pill holder, and a whole bunch of those, like I said, the replacement hinges for the Skull Candy Crusher. Although I think I need to switch back to a different design on that and either reprint in ABS or some CF mix, some carbon fiber mix, if I ever get any. PETG just had too much flexibility to it, and it wasn't rigid enough to hold everything into the place that it was supposed to be. I have some clear ABS left, but I don't think that is going to be a good choice for that particular application. I would rather not have it transparent. The snap hook replacement for one of my belt bags that had broken, all I did is I took someone else's design and I scaled it up until it fit. Something I know I've mentioned on some other shows, but not on this one. I did pick up in the past, I know I talked about the APC UPS that I wanted for out in the garage that I was looking for a used one for, and I couldn't find one, and I ended up just going to Micro Center and spending $100. Anyways, well, I was at one of the resale places a couple of weeks ago now, and I did find one, brand new, for $10. I could tell that it had never actually been used because the battery connector was not correctly set into place. It's got this little plastic thing that you pull out and then you put into the correct position so that it actually connects the battery. And I did that before I bought it, and it came right on. So I will be putting that, or I have put that into my living room, and it's going to power the modem, the router, and the little Proxmox PC set-top box that I have there that also has Search NG running on the back end. This will mean that if and when the power goes out, I should still be able to have internet at least. And if it only goes out for a short amount of time, that means that all my stuff's not going to power cycle, and everything should be up and stable. I mean, even if I have to use my phone to tether to my router, I should be able to, but that's only if, like my telecom company loses power as well. But yeah. In some Linux things that I actually did, I'm now using Guake. I think it's Guake. I think that's supposed to be Guake on all my machines. I don't know if you're familiar with Guake. It's actually a drop-down terminal.
It's a drop-down terminal thing, isn't it?
Drop-down terminal application. Just use a quick key combo and a terminal with tabs. Drops down from the top of the screen. Now, I did some settings tweaking so that it will also hide when it's not in focus. I find it useful, but I've yet to figure out how to get it to open in terminal when I am in a specific folder. That was at that time. I have figured it out since then. I did test out I have it set as the preferred application, and then I was having this problem where if I right-click something in Nemo and say open in terminal, it would just take me to the home, or wherever I was previously in terminal. But I did put in a workaround. Looking around, I found a way to make a new open in Quake function that creates a new tab in Quake and brings it into focus on the requested path. Everything works perfect. Still a bit of a setup to get everything working the way that I want. Now I just have to remember to do it every time I set up a new machine. I knew there was a reason that I tend to go for stock settings, and it's so that I don't have to keep redoing this every time I set up a computer. But one interesting thing, I was able to use SCP for the function that I had created to push it out to all my various machines so that I didn't have to manually go and set it up. Just one central machine, push it out to all the other ones.
Oh, that
So
sounds
yeah.
quite cool, actually. Okay, so what's the logistics of doing that? You say you write a script, is it? I mean,
Well, I had to create a file in a specific location that adds the functionality that I want. It is
okay.
on the home path. And then all I did was, I pretended that I was Ansible and I pushed it out to all my various computers.
Okay, I got you. It's pretty
So,
cool. It's surprising, actually.
what, that I did
So,
something in Linux?
not that it's something in Linux, but it's just I was, it doesn't matter. I'll
No,
leave.
no, no, no. I like the discourse. Nobody ever talks
Oh,
on
no,
my
no,
stuff.
no,
They just talk on everybody
no, no,
else's
no.
stuff.
Is it? No, I'm just wondering how much of a nerd you have to be to have a particular terminal thing and have all these shortcuts.
Oh, I used to use it too, and it was to get it set up to work with your the what you want for the shortcuts, and to get it to work in the right windowing mode, can sometimes be depending on the desktop that you're trying to use it on, because it was kind of made for GNOME. Does it have good Wayland support now? Because that was the reason I had to stop using it.
If I had anything that used Wayland, I'd let you know.
I know, and yeah, I
You
on
haven't got a single device that's on some kind of Wayland.
Mint, 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 mint.
Joe is not a distro hopper.
Yeah, just as well, probably. Can you imagine how long the wanderings would be then? Okay.
Yeah, I
Cool.
spend all my time trying to make whatever, distro that I jump to work exactly like Mint. So why not just use Mint?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't blame you.
Actually, I probably need
All
to
right,
go back
Majid.
to Mint. I'm getting fed up on this one. All right, fine. Okay. So, just some general stuff. Ramadan's over. We had Eid. There was lots of food. I had a really nice Moroccan / Pakistani breakfast that was cooked by one of my friends, because he's Pakistani origin, but his missus is Moroccan, and it was
You
it was
had
a
one of
nice
your
fusion.
friends for breakfast? That's messed
Yes, I
up,
had him
bro.
for breakfast. Exactly, man. That's exactly what I had for breakfast. Yeah, very meaty. Anyway, it was really nice, actually. So that was good. Work is work. More management stuff. Apparently, there's going to be another strike again. The residents are going to, the residents are revolting again. I'm not entirely sure why now, because there's no money. Well, I mean, there's money for missiles and bombing places, but there's no money for, like, paying people, because, I mean, that's not important, obviously. And I was listening to an old Linux OTC, and I was talking about, me and Bill were chatting about how you can have 4 seasons in a day sometimes, in different parts of the world. And we literally had that the other day, where, I walked out in the morning to find frozen hail on my car, and then by the end of the day, it was like lovely and sunny and whatever. But that's the UK, isn't it? That's the way it works. Okay, then. So I actually had a bit of fun, actually, in that I did a couple of projects, and the projects were good fun, actually. Um, I have a slight existential bent to this, which I'll get to in a second. So I'd kind of mentioned, I think, on the last Wanderings episode that I had been looking into post-market OS and again maybe getting that onto a Chrome tablet type of thing, which I had bought, but I hadn't got around to doing it yet. Well, I did that. That was interesting. First time I've used like a bootstrap in it type stuff. And there was lots of guides for all the shade I put on AI. AI really is helpful in these situations, getting correct commands in and this, that, and the other. And so fine, so that did that, worked great. The issues, I was having the one or two pieces of software which I couldn't get. I tried to learn how to compile from source. I wasn't able to do it. I probably made some mistake somewhere, and so I used DistroBox to get the one or two apps that I needed from somewhere else. So that was cool. The performance is all right. I put Plasma Mobile on there, which gives you a kind of like an Android tablet type interface, but still the same apps. And so that was, that's been working quite well. The battery life is interesting in that the standby life is really good, like MacBook M1 levels. I mean, I suppose so. I suppose it would be. It's an ARM device, but when you're using it, it drains. But I mean, I suppose the used thing, isn't it? The slight existential thing I was talking about is that I realized that 5, 6, 10 years ago there was a wide variety of different Android devices you could get. You could get tablets at each kind of size. Phones were of different types. You had things like the LG Wing with its dual screen and all that sort of stuff. And nowadays, a lot of that just seems to have just gone. I mean, it's interesting. There was actually some new some
Technology fails again. The deafening sound of silence.
Well, I guess we got to move on to Charles for now and then go back to Majid.
Charles, I don't have anything else.
You haven't done anything for the last 2 weeks?
I've
weeks?
done stuff, but I didn't
4
post
weeks?
anything. Go to gym.
I'm starting to think Charles is a black dark web or not dark web, dark matter developer, because he's never had a Wanderings.
No, that's not true. I did a wandering about my girlfriend and her email and
Okay.
putting her on Thunderbird and archiving a bunch of her stuff off of Yahoo Mail.
Right.
So,
I apologize. I stand corrected.
yep. So,
I wonder if he knows.
All right.
anyway, so since we lost Majid, he's probably going to gym then. See if he comes back, but maybe he lost power there in the UK.
Yeah, mine is really long.
Yeah, I see that.
we should see if. Oh, wow. Yeah, I see Majid's frozen, but yeah, hopefully he's rebooting. All right. I could start. You want me
go
to
ahead and
interrupt
start,
when we come?
and he can always come in after you. I don't see why that
Okay.
wouldn't be a thing.
Okay. Poor guy. Well, there he is. Here he is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have no idea what happened then. My whole machine just froze up. I don't know why.
Well, you were talking about battery life. So.
Yeah. Okay, so sorry for this slight interruption. We are now going back to our normally scheduled programming. Yeah, so I was just saying about how battery life on that device ain't brilliant when you're using it, but the standby life is really good. Now, while I was playing around with Plasma Mobile and the kind of tablet interface that it kind of had, it made me realize something, that a lot of the Android competition, the variety in the different kind of devices we used to get, maybe definitely 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, has just disappeared. And it's interesting that there is actually there was a news article a couple of days ago about how OnePlus might be exiting the European and American market. And so it I was kind of mulling this over in my mind. Anyway, I it reminded me that I think a 8-inch tablet is a really perfect size for a tablet for reading, for um, comics, or books, or everything. And I used to have a couple of those back in the day, Galaxy Tab S2s, Galaxy Tab S, with an 8-inch screen, something like that. So I thought, I wonder if there's any of those around. And there's just basically nothing. I mean, you get some really weedy kind of Samsung, but not just Samsung, other devices like Lenovo, and then some other
You're
kind of
almost in
Chinese. No,
phone size territory at
well,
8
yeah,
inches.
exactly. But the thing is that there is something about that size. It's easier to read rather than you kind of staring at this thing right in front of your face, and it's not big and heavy. Now I know that bigger other Android tablets, the large ones, are much lighter than they used to be and much more svelte. But we all put them in cases and we all put them in kind of folios and stuff like that. So that kind of negates a lot of that. Anyway, so I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could get back to something like a Galaxy Tab S2? Well, wait a minute. I wonder if there's a custom ROM for it because, those days, 2015, 2016, there was a lot of custom ROM stuff happening. So I managed to find a used Galaxy Tab S2 from 2015 on eBay for about £20. And then of an evening, I managed to update that all the way up to Android 11. And the only reason I didn't go any further was because the Lineage ROM that was newer than that did go all the way up to Android 15, was quite buggy, apparently, by the developer. And he said that, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, this, the camera doesn't work, or the fingerprint sensor doesn't work, or all that sort of stuff. And so I was really enjoyed how well that worked. I was able to flash a custom recovery, put, as I said, Lineage OS on it. I put some an open Google Apps suite and everything, and it was just good fun, really was. And now I have this little e-reader type device which I can just throw in my bag, and if I'm going, I can just sit and read if I'm reading, in the coffee room or something like that. So I thought that was a real good way of kind of what's the phrase, repurposing old technology. As I said, it would be nice if there was, because in Android there just isn't anything of that size. I know there's iPad minis that you can get. I've had an iPad mini before. No, thank you. I'm not doing that again. So anyway, I can't remember if this actually was discussed, but when we were on Roundtable last week, we had a guy called.
Quick interruption there.
Go ahead.
Doesn't Amazon make something in that size range?
Yes, but you can't get Google services on it, and I've got quite a few books that are Google Play. At least I
Jim's
wasn't
gonna say
able
it.
to.
I'll let Jim say it.
Yes, I agree with what you said that 8-inch is the ideal size as an ebook reader or a comic reader. I have a Fire HD 8 tablet from Amazon, of course. I got it for like $50. It's got a stupid ad on the lock screen, which you just swipe past anyway. And it's the perfect size. It feels like you're holding a hardcover book. Anything bigger like the 10-inch I have is just way too big to read, in my opinion. And the only other option would be like a 6-inch, like the Kindle Paperwhite that I inherited from my mom. That is more like a paperback book. It's light and you can hold it with one hand and it's very thin. But for a two-handed, like sort of, hardcover book read, the 8-inch is great. And you can, if you download 4 individual files, you could install Google Play and services on there. So you could install apps from the Google Store, 90-something% of which will work on it, just like it will on a Android phone. And of course, you can also install F-Droid on there. So I have a lot of apps on my Fire HD 8, and I read a ton of ebooks from the library for free. I read PDFs that I download from the Internet Archive or acquire in other ways, and I have an RSS reader on there to read comics and stuff like that. I think it's a very good form factor.
Yes. So I was I remember I was mulling over whether to get a Kindle because I know, yeah, like you say, there are ways of getting all the other things on as well. Um, it just seemed like a bit of a fun project, and when I saw the thing for £20 on eBay, I was kind of like, I mean, I don't want to sound like an arrogant rich man, but it's not a huge amount of money. If it, if the worst happens and it doesn't work, I can still buy a Kindle. But yeah, the whole thing seemed to, as I said, it all seemed to work out all right. And yes, I've also got a lot of PDFs, and so that's I read stuff through that as well. Um, I can't remember if we were discussing this specifically, but on our last roundtable, we had someone else come on. As we always say, we always like to get further engagement, and we had a guy called Charlie from the UK as well, who came on, and he's come part of our community, and we were hoping he'd actually come on today, but unfortunately, he's got a prior engagement. Anyway, somewhere along the line, the conversation, I think it started there, but then ended up on Discord, came about Graphene OS. And I haven't actually tried graphene. I've read about it, I've heard about it, I've seen reviews about it, and all that sort of stuff. And so on this bit of a high that I had of having successfully repurposed this old Galaxy Tab S2, I thought, let's see if I can repurpose an old Pixel 6. I was looking to buy a phone anyway for my daughter anyway. So I thought, well, if I can get a cheap one of these, try graphene, have a bit of a play around with that. That was remarkably easy to do. I mean, their web installer really is just, I mean, it's almost plug and play, really. Connect it up, press the correct buttons, and it will do everything for you. Very, very polished experience. Using it, you do notice some of the secret sauce that is proprietary stuff that's put on there has gone. Like, for example, especially with the camera. Not that it's a bad camera, but you could tell. I managed to put a Gcam port on there, and suddenly, my images were much better. So it was it was a nice experience. It was experiment. It was good fun. It's not on I don't think I'll be running graphene full time as a daily driver. I really like the project. I really like the way that it's getting away from tracking and secure and private and stuff. But there's always this thing, isn't there, about the convenience and the security. I mean, we've talked about it loads of times, isn't it? Usability, privacy, security, and you have to kind of figure out where along that mental map you're happy to be. And so that was a good thing. I'd also mentioned, I think before, that I think that this was on OTC actually. I talked about my Galaxy Tab, the other one that I had, the Tab S8 Plus, same one that Eric has, and how the battery life had suddenly gone bad. I don't know what had happened. I did a bit of resetting and whatever. Anyway, I thought let's see if I can sell it, see if I can make some money. I managed to sell it pretty easily. So then I thought, well, I want to let me buy another tablet or something like that, or maybe I'll just watch media or whatever, which I do on cause that's mainly what my tablets are for. I use them mainly for media. Hashtag first world problem. I was missing having an OLED screen, I must say. Standard IPS LCD, you can get really good ones and they're very nice and whatever, but once you've got used to an OLED, which is what that Galaxy Tab S8 Plus was, I kind of thought, well, let me just get another OLED one. So I got this Honor Magic Pad. Again, they're on number 4 now, but you can get a 2-year-old one, Magic Pad 2, which still has a Snapdragon 8 series Gen 3, I want to say. So it's still a pretty beefy machine, and the screen is gorgeous. It's brilliant. I love it. Yeah. So I realized that while I was writing all this out, that apart from that Galaxy Tab S2, which I bought, as I said, more recently, I had a window where I had no Samsung devices at all. And, it was interesting that I kept on thinking to myself, I've had some kind of Samsung device in my house in some way, shape, or form for over 10 years, whether it was a tablet, whether it was a phone, whether it was earbuds, whether it was anything. It just seemed, as someone who likes to not follow the duopoly, it's still funny that I still had something like that. In more experimental news, I have been trying the Zen browser for a bit. So this is a Firefox based browser, but it's kind of much along the kind of Arc browser kind of concept. Welcome to a calmer internet is their tagline, and you have vertical tabs and all that sort of stuff. And because it's Firefox based, it integrates with your Firefox account, and all your bookmarks and all this kind of stuff get synced and everything. It's a decent browser. It is a different way of doing things. I think it works better on something like a laptop than it does on a desktop. And so it was on this device here, this podcasting box, but I moved back to Firefox because Firefox. We all have Stockholm syndrome with Firefox, don't we? We all keep going back. Just a quick word because I haven't been on for a bit. I just thought a bit about some of the media that I've been enjoying. I was in the middle of Bosch Legacy, and then for some reason I'd stopped, and so I finished off the second season of that, which was good fun, which I really enjoyed. There have been some big releases, inverted commas, in streaming. Invincible season 4, Paradise season 2, Daredevil Born Again season 2. So I've been following that. It's interesting. I know, we've now got so used to binging that I just wonder whether we've actually lost the habit of watching something once a week, because that's a lot of these things are like that. There'll be 2 or 3 initial episodes, and then you have to wait every week like a Neanderthal.
Yeah, I've been kind of holding off on Daredevil for that specific reason because I want more episodes all at once.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do not have the patience to do that. But they've all been good fun. There's also this one Bait on Amazon Prime, which is it's got Riz Ahmed and Gus Khan, and it's a comedy about yeah, you just watch it. It's about James Bond, and it's got a lot of South Asian kind of jokes in there and things like that. It's funny. It's also got a fantastic Indian version of Sweet Dreams, done by this artist called Uruj Aftab, which is just brilliant. I loved it. Speaking of songs, actually, I've told lots of times here about I've used different headphones, I've used different earbuds, and all that sort of stuff. I've been on Spotify on and off for over 10 years now. I know I've got my own media. I also have tried all different ones. I've talked about how I've used Deezer and Tidal and Amazon Music and YouTube Music and whatever. And so anyway, I've made loads of playlists. I think I made 63 playlists the last time I checked. Anyway, I started listening to some of my older playlists again. And I realized that when I'd initially made those playlists, I was listening on, I don't know, my Galaxy S7 with a wired headphone that came in the box. And now I was listening to it, those same songs, but with the better quality earbuds or headphones and whatever. And it's been fun listening to songs again and now noticing things that you didn't notice before, or they're a bit more vibrant than they were before. So and especially the Killers. I'm not going to say I'm a big fan, but I like some of the big tunes that they've got. And listening to them again, having not heard them for 10 years or whatever, but through nicer headphones, really got me enthused again. And I really enjoyed listening to them. And speaking of music, just as a last thing, I came across a guitar band from South Africa who basically do songs of Arabic poems, and it's kind of like Oasis in Arabic, which just shouldn't work, but it does. At least for me, anyway. They're called Seven Stations. They're on the usual streaming places. So, yeah, if anybody's interested, have a check them out. Anywho, after even with my interruptions, that's my wanderings done. Charles, do you have any wanderings?
No, yeah, we were discussing that while you were offline. No, I don't have any wanderings. I do have a one or two quick questions. So,
Go
has
ahead, go ahead.
anybody heard? Has anybody heard when Motorola is going to release the Graphene OS phones? I know they announced it.
Yeah, they are now. They just said later in the year, and they weren't any more specific than
Okay,
that.
all
That's what
right,
I
good.
heard.
Okay. The other
That was
thing
that,
too.
that'll
Sorry,
be
go ahead.
interesting. Actually, that'll be interesting because graphene has always been a pixel thing. I mean, I know they have a generic image, but they've always kind of been quite tightly integrated with pixels. And at one point, I read an article that explained to me why, and I've completely forgotten why that reason is. Something to do with the device tree or something like that. I can't remember.
Okay.
Um,
And the other thing, you were talking about going back and listening to old songs. Now I'm a lot older than you, Majid. But anyway, I notice when I download some music, was it YouTube YTDLP or YouTube DLP, and from the internet, I've noticed like if it's age or whatever, the songs that some that I download are mixed differently than like what I heard on the radio growing up when I was a kid or a teenager.
mm,
And
there,
I
there, there,
mean, a
there
couple
seems
of them
to.
are significantly different. So,
Yeah,
but anyway,
I think you do find that certain artists do like to go back and remaster
yeah.
some stuff. So, for example, Megadeth did that with the Rust in Peace album. There's a 2004 remaster, for example, of that, and it sounds quite different actually. I mean, I can tell the difference, and I'm not the best at knowing these
Yeah.
things. Similarly, there was a couple of other. Muse had a 20th anniversary edition of what was the album, man? The one with Plug In Baby and Newborn and I can't remember the name of the album now. But anyway, the one from 2001. And so they did a 20th version, and Matt Bellamy had gone back and remastered the tapes and whatever. And again, sounded different. I'm not going to say better or worse, but just different. I suppose there's also a little bit of the kind of maybe when we were younger, listening to stuff. We were. I don't know about you, but I never had great audio equipment when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? It was just a crappy little radio or a Walkman with tape or Discman with a CD or whatever. So maybe that's the difference as well. I don't know.
Yeah, some of it, yeah. I just noticed it with Aerosmith, Dream On, the song, and an
Hmm.
Elton John song. They were totally different from the ones I played on the radio when I was growing up. But anyway, enough of that dead
Yeah.
horse. So,
Okay then, Jim. Apparently, you have some noteworthy things to tell us. Hey! Sorry.
Yuck, yuck.
great
Yeah.
segue. Good
Yeah,
job.
I'm available for weddings, birthdays, bar mitzvahs, funerals. Please tip your waitress.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with a question before I launch into this long explanation. But aside from Collabora that we use to share the show notes, real quickly, what do you guys use for notes, if anything?
So I have a variety of things. If I'm doing notes that are handwritten notes, like with a stylus or whatever, I use Microsoft OneNote because they seem to have they have good stylus support on. So when I had, for example, a Galaxy Note device or whatever, that was one.
OneNote is the best thing to ever come out of Microsoft.
Yes.
Not a fan. I've used it.
Yeah, I use Google Keep for just like if I remember something, like if I'm walking around and oh shit, I need to do this, I'll make a quick note. I use Google Keep. There's standard notes, which I used for because it's encrypted. So I might keep certain more sensitive information that I need saved somewhere, but I don't want to be easily seen on that. I have tried the kind of notes apps that you get on like Android phones and tablets. So like Xiaomi have got one and OnePlus have got one, and they're never really that good. Um, I tried Notion, and I was just a bit overwhelmed with, it was like, there was so much stuff that you could do that I was kind of paralyzed by the choice. So I didn't know what to do, so I didn't do anything. And recently, oh no, and I mean very recently, on the Distro Hoppers Digest, which I'm doing with Dale, he uses Markdown in the Nextcloud suite, which is pretty cool actually. I quite like that. Me and Bill were even wondering about whether we could put it here, but I suppose our show notes are slightly different to what Dale has on Distro Hoppers Digest. I see you have quite a few things. What about you, Joe?
I wanted to mention that I've used most of the, open source or quasi open source or free note taking tools out there. I do still use OneNote, but I only use that for work these days. My main one that I'm using right now is Joplin. But yeah, the Markdown, of course. And then previously I have used Evernote. I have used Simple Note.
I never got on with the
several others.
Evernote. I don't know why everybody seems to think it was what was so
Well,
good about it.
Evernote was a lot like OneNote in that you could, take pictures and dump it in there and everything else and just freehand notes if you were on your phone or something. But yeah, after they went, and closed things up and made it more difficult to have it on, what was it, more than 3
Yeah,
devices?
I was gonna say that was the big thing for me. It was kind of like,
Yeah, I
the
dropped it.
3 device limit. I was just like, forget
I was
that.
using it before they put that on there, so
Mm,
I stopped when they did. Oh, and Standard Note. Simple
yeah,
Note,
standard.
Standard Note.
Yeah.
I've used both of those, and then now, like I said, I'm on Joplin, and that was at Eric's suggestion because I guess the main reason I still use it is because it's all on my server.
Hmm.
It doesn't go out to anybody else. I am end to end. It's all me. So yeah.
I tried Joplin. I don't know why I didn't persist with it. I think again it might have been a bit because it's so powerful that I was a bit paralyzed by what I could do
And
with it.
Markdown's a bit difficult to use on a regular basis.
Hmm. We would ask
Charles?
Bill, but Bill has
Yeah.
left the building, left the office. Yeah. Charles, what about you?
Yeah, so I've used OneNote, Microsoft, and previous employers. Um, I have Evernote, which I'm still actively using, but there's things that have gotten annoying about it. Actually, what I've tried to do, and it's a work in progress, is doing Markdown documents and putting them in a Git repository,
Ooh.
and doing that because they're centrally
See,
located
that's the
there.
way a proper Linux guy does it.
But it's a work in progress. But trying to go to the Markdown process and way of documents and stuff. One of the things like I keep hanging on to Evernote, like Joe had mentioned, is that you can drop images in there really easily or clip a web page and stuff. And I don't know about the last time I looked at Joplin, Obsidian, Open Notes, Standard Notes, all those I've tried them. They just don't appeal to me. But I haven't tried Notes Nook or Notes. Yeah, Notes Nook. But anyway, so that's kind of my journey of note-taking apps and documentation.
Well, thank you for answering. We'll catch up with Bill when he comes back, but I should get started talking about my journey because that your guys' answers just goes to show how many options that there are and how many people have tried. I was expecting those kind of answers. I personally have been using Notes for the last few years. I really like it. I'm happy with it. It has an app image for on Linux. I use it on my Android smartphone, my Fire HD tablet, and it has free automatic syncing and the free tier works well, and I'm happy with it. But after hearing so many people talk about different notes apps, I wanted to try another one. So I installed Obsidian. What appealed to me about it was the fact that it used Markdown files and would share them, completely on your own. So, even though Obsidian itself is proprietary, the Markdown files are not. And it was very easy to, export the Markdown files from Notesnook. And they imported right into Obsidian. And it was easy to install Obsidian on my Android phone and my Fire HD tablets. So now I needed sync capability because unlike Notesnook, which has free syncing, but it puts some of the other features like a task list or embedding of images behind a paywall, unless you want to self-host it, Obsidian is the opposite. And it makes all its very considerable amount of features free. But their business model, it puts the auto syncing behind a paywall. So you need to bring your own sync solution, of which there are several. Charles just hinted at one. You could use a GitHub. There's other ways to do it. But what I decided to do was to use SyncThing for the first time in my life to synchronize the notes that were in a directory on my laptop, or my primary device that I'm sitting in front of now, and then sync those 15 or 16 Markdown files to my other devices. SyncThing is ubiquitous. It installs on pretty much every operating system. I did find it to be a little confusing to set up when you're trying to share the same folder multiple places without making redundant connections. But once you get it set up, it is available on pretty much every operating system. When you do that on Android, you have to use SyncThing-Fork. That's the recommended compatible application. So you could install that on your Android phone from F-Droid or on Android-based tablets like my Fire HD tablet. And then I, of course, had Obsidian on my phones and tablets. Or you can use an alternative app because, again, if you're sharing Markdown files, unlike your something proprietary in Notesnook, those files are just sitting on your hard drive in any directory that you want. And now you're using bring your own sync solution to transfer them around, and you're not tied to using Obsidian. You could use Obsidian on one device. You could use some other app on another, anything that could read Markdown files and mix and match. Again, because Markdown.md files are an open standard. So I also tried out something called Markor, Markor. It's a free and open source app from F-Droid. It's a full-featured Markdown editor and reader, which is an alternative to Obsidian on Android phones or tablets. All right, so then that left me with a problem on my GhostBSD desktop next to me. Unlike there, I could not install Obsidian, unlike on my phones, my tablet, and my Linux devices. So I had to figure something out, right? It's not available, but in the software station as a package, but it is available in ports, which is meaning that it could be built from source. Ports and dependencies must first be installed from the command line in GhostBSD, which essentially downloads hundreds of directories containing some smallish text and support files with what are essentially instructions to automate the build process. And this would be my first time ever building an application from source, because on Linux I've never had to. So I followed the prompts in the terminal, and I got it all set up, and it downloaded for 6 hours. It was downloading and compiling, and it seemed like it was working, even though it took quite a while to get there. And then after 6 hours, I realized it was giving me updates through the terminal. It started downloading multiple huge Electron packages, probably borrowed from Linux. And I knew I was out of luck since there were many more gigabytes coming, and I had effectively just run out of space. It had filled up my small SSD that's in that cheapo desktop I bought on Craigslist, and it only had 15 gigs left because it's a very small SSD. So my attempt to build Obsidian on GhostBSD, it did not work. Simply because I ran out of space. Mind you, Obsidian on Linux is only about 300 megabytes, which is not a small program, but it's certainly not 15 or 20 or whatever it would have ended up being. I don't know why it takes that many gigabytes to build something on GhostBSD. I imagine it would be similar on Linux, but it does. So that ended that experiment, and I realized I needed a different client. Now, remember, because dealing with Markdown files...
Sorry, just one quick interruption.
Sure.
The Ghost BSD desktop, I remember you mentioning that the Ghost BSD, the device that you had, was more of a kind of a test thing. Have you started going over using it much more as a production operating system now?
Well, it's an alternative device sitting to my left. I mean, I sit in front of my laptop, the device I'm sitting in front of you now. That's my main device for email, chat, browsing. Mm-hmm. I've got another desktop over here, Linux Mint, that does music and downloads things in the background and hosts my Plex server and a whole bunch of other things. I've got another desktop over there that has Linux Mint that used to be a video editing machine, and now it's a backup device. Mm-hmm. And then to answer your question, the Ghost BSD machine, really, I'm just playing around with it to prove my experiment that everything that you can do on Linux Mint can be done on Ghost BSD. So yeah, I sit in front of it a few hours a week, and I keep checking off every, last obscure thing to figure out that didn't work. Because like I said on a previous show, almost everything works on there right out of the bat. Firefox, Thunderbird, all the things you would expect. They even have Cinnamon on there. It almost looks like if you just sat in front of it, you'd think you were sitting in front of Linux Mint, because I have Cinnamon on there. So, yeah, this was just I needed to prove that I could, extend this experiment in trying an alternative device, alternative note-taking system to there as well. So yeah, that's why I'm now talking about this. So indeed, because Obsidian, I ran out of space. I'm pretty sure it would have worked. It seemed like it was about to work, but simply just ran out of space on the hard drive. So I had to find a different app that I could use. Now, I found one right in the repository, installed it through the software station. There's an app called QOwn Notes. It's named that because it's based on Qt, and you're using your own notes, Markdown files. It describes itself as a free and open source plain text file Markdown note-taking app. It has Nextcloud and OwnCloud integration. It is available in the GhostBSD repository, as I just said. And it's also available for Linux, Windows, Mac, and everything except for mobile platforms. They expect that if you're using Nextcloud or OwnCloud, which are integrated into it, you can get your apps via mobile that way. In any case, I have to say there's something to be said for a purpose-built app like this, because QOwn Notes was only a slender 21 megabytes, compared to, hundreds of megabytes for Obsidian. And, it worked just fine. It's attractive enough. It has a dark mode, and, it has a ton of settings. It's a purpose-built Markdown editor and reader. So all you had to do is, point it at the directory containing your Markdown notes that you previously synced with SyncThing. And these Markdown notes are tiny, by the way, even though they're thousands and thousands of characters and thousands of lines. You're talking in kilobytes, not megabytes for files. So, yeah, that worked. Because again, with Markdown, you're not trapped. You don't have to have everything the same application like you do with NoteSnook. Obviously, it's a proprietary closed system that's end-to-end encrypted with Obsidian or with Markdown files. Yes, you can use Obsidian on all your devices, but you can mix and match anything else. And the only little annoyance that I, of course, had to solve immediately was I realized that when, once SyncThing was all set up, QO Notes generates a tiny little notes.sqlite file, which then, SyncThing was trying to sync it over to my Linux and laptop and my phone, and that annoyed me. So I had to figure out how to create an exclude file in SyncThing to prevent that from happening. And then I also had to use the .hidden file trick. I assume you guys all know what that is, when you want to hide a file from yourself so you don't have to look at it in a GUI file manager. You use a file called .hidden, and you put the name of the folders or files you want to hide from yourself, and that solved that problem. So, now I have a multi-device sync setup, right? It's essentially a hub and spoke model. My laptop here that I'm sitting in front of, that's always on, always with me, is the central server, and SyncThing sends my Markdown files to my Samsung phone. It sends it to my Fire HD tablet. It sends it to the GhostBSD desktop where I can read it through QO Notes, and it also it sends it to a install I have of Linux on a USB drive. More on that later. So amazingly enough, you guys may be familiar with SyncThing, but SyncThing is able to sync once you get it set up. Over your local network, but SyncThing is able to sync over the internet. You could prove that by turning off Wi-Fi or leaving your house and making sure you're only using 5G on your phone. And SyncThing is amazing, and it's a program I always wanted to learn. And so this is a parallel system or an alternative system to using NoteSnook, and I thought it was pretty cool.
SyncThing is kind of awesome. I mean, even if you're using it beyond just your note-taking stuff, you can use it to basically back up your entire phone to your home server, or to for some automation if you put download something to your phone. Depending on the extension, you can have it go and run on your home computer. So. Now, I've used SyncThing, but I'm actually a bit more familiar with Resilio Sync, and the reason I had chosen Resilio Sync over SyncThing was because Resilio Sync uses the BitTorrent for its backend. So the more nodes you have set up, the faster it will be. So once you get it on 5 or 6 computers, it just makes everything very snappy. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I will say this now, to compare the two systems, right? NoteSnook, the system I was using, which I was happy with, but I wanted to learn, this other system, right? The advantage of NoteSnook, in conclusion, is that it's less setup. You don't need to have SyncThing installed because their sync is included, and you get end-to-end encryption. Right, and it's constantly running everywhere, so you don't have to set up SyncThing or make sure it's running on all your devices. Also, NoteSnook has a web interface. If you're on any device that doesn't have a client, FreeBSD or OpenBSD or anything even more obscure than that, you could just use the web interface. So there's something to be said for NoteSnook's ease of use. And I also learned an interesting tidbit, because I wanted to also prove that I could use NoteSnook on my GhostBSD machine. I realized, I just tried something, because I'm using Cinnamon over there. If you add a menu item in the Cinnamon menu, you just add a link and make the link say Firefox space and then HTTPS and the URL. Then you could add any icon that you want, whether it's a custom one or one that you create. when you hit the super key to launch, your menu in Cinnamon, and then the name of the program. In this case, I called it NoteSnook. It instantly opened up a tab in Firefox if it was open, or it would launch Firefox. So effectively, you're using a web page and as if it was an app in the Cinnamon menu. So because I wanted to make sure that if I wanted to use NoteSnook over there on GhostBSD, I could do the same thing I do on Linux, which is hit the super key, type NOT, and then boom, it would launch just like as if it was an app, even though it's essentially just opening up a web page. So I thought that was cool. I didn't realize that would actually work, but it did. So, all right, now in contrast to NoteSnook, the advantage of Obsidian, this alternative system with Markdown files. Obsidian uses this open standard. They do have a FreeBSD client if you compile it from ports, which I almost succeeded at. It has a very similar interface in NoteSnook, so much so that I almost now realize that NoteSnook probably copied their interface because it looks so strikingly familiar, especially if you make them both the same dark mode. And then the other thing, people who are much more into notes than me and have much more sophisticated systems will tell you there is a gigantic array of plugins on Obsidian that do all kinds of things that are way more complicated than the simple text notes and the checklists or task lists that I use. So that's the advantage of Obsidian. And then lastly, the advantage of using something like QONotes or Marcor on your Linux or FreeBSD computers or on your Android phone or tablet. These lightweight, small, purpose-built Markdown readers, and this is huge, I didn't realize this until I experimented with it. Unlike NoteSnook or Obsidian, you can change the size of the font on one of your devices, and it doesn't affect the other device. If you're on NoteSnook, if you change the font on the app image on your laptop, it affects the size of the font on your phone. There's no way around. You can't unsync them. So if you want 15 size, it's going to be 15 on your phone and on your laptop. You can't change it. Same even on Obsidian. If you're using Obsidian on your Linux laptop and Obsidian on your phone, if you choose 15 font size, it's 15 on the other device. There's no way to separate those. However, if you're using Markdown, this open standard, and you're using something like QONotes or Marcor, you can pick one font size on your laptop. Maybe you want a bigger one because you got lots more, you got a big screen. Whereas on your phone, you can make the font, a couple points smaller if you're trying to fit everything on your much, much smaller phone screen so that you don't get annoying line wrapping for things that are single line. So that is a huge advantage I realized after. Now, how much does that bother me? Well, the overall conclusion is, right at the moment, for the past month almost, I have been running both NoteSnook and my Markdown files on Obsidian and QONotes and Marcor, and I'm just maintaining them both. Now that's kind of redundant. At some point, I'm going to probably just have to say, I don't want to maintain two systems or copy my changes to one and the other. Ultimately, I think I'm probably just going to stick with NoteSnook in the end, but I don't feel like I wasted my time, even though I went down a deep rabbit hole and spent hours tinkering with all this, because I learned a lot about Markdown, about Notes apps, about sync. I learned how to use syncing. I learned about GhostBSD ports and compiling from source. So, but yeah, those are the advantages and disadvantages. I thought that was something worth exploring. Okay, so I will go on to something else.
Yeah, I was going to say that was quite comprehensive, actually.
Yeah, that almost could have been its own.
That would have been an innards back in the day, wouldn't it?
An innards, yeah.
No. We should have had an innards show today and just had Jim run it, because I'm looking at the rest of his notes, and that's what it should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. I love the Wanderings episode because, as you see, I have other stuff to talk about now. And all right, let's get into it. YTDLP, I talked about how YouTube has been throwing up a lot of roadblocks lately to make YTDLP less effective. A lot of people have been complaining online, not just me. So, obviously YouTube doesn't want you to download stuff. They want you to be captive, watch the videos, be stuck listening to the ads, right? But YTDLP is an amazing application in the command line. It does help to read the error messages you get in the terminal if you try to download something and it fails, as it has been doing more often lately, right? So one of the error messages referenced to GitHub, and I had to look at this a couple of times, and it took me a couple tries to like sleep on it and figure it out. But I was able to get past the latest electronic gatekeeper, like yesterday, for example. The first thing you want to do is make sure that whatever you're using the latest version of YTDLP, because it's an arm race, and they, constantly update that program pretty often. I'm using the PPA from Ubuntu on Linux Mint, to get around whatever roadblocks YouTube throws up. So then in the same error message, it specifically mentioned downloading Deno, D-E-N-O. I believe that's a CAPTCHA solver. They recommend, and if you went to the GitHub, it explains you could install it with curl pretty simply. That's simple, just a simple matter of, curl blankety blank and install Deno. Then you want to type Deno, -- version in the terminal. Make sure you have it installed. Now, on top of that, there are some switches you could invoke in YTDLP. Again, this is a command line program. In my case, I was doing something a bit challenging from a YouTube perspective, right? I'm trying to download a stream live as it's streaming, which involves one switch. And secondly, it was geo-blocked in the United States, which means I had to already have an active VPN connection, to London, England in this case. So not only do you have to use, -- cookies from browser to log in, because when you're coming through a VPN, they often will stop you from downloading if you are not logged in. That's the first thing. You got to make sure you're using cookies from browser. And then the second thing is, for the very first time, again, reading on the GitHub and trying things out in conjunction with Deno, which just works in the background, not part of the YouTube command, I had to add in the switch -- I refuse to call it -- or -- remote - components, and then something EJS : GitHub. It's a switch or another variable you throw into the YouTube line when you type it in the terminal. And that finally worked. It allowed me to download this stream that was streaming live as it was going through a VPN that I previously had difficulty and roadblocks getting. And in the show notes, if you're one of those people who's been frustrated by YTDLP or given up on it recently, I included the full line that worked, which was, YTDLP, space -- live -- from start from start space -- cookies -- from - browser, then the word space, then the word Firefox. Then you had to add finally -- remote - components, and then space EJS : GitHub, and then finally the
tag,
URL.
Right?
What's that?
That's a tag,
Yes.
right?
Dash or
tag,
is a
tag.
dash or a hyphen, not a tag, sir.
Tack, right?
Both those things are
Tack.
tag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Taken, what, what?
It's in the show notes. I don't expect anyone to listen to that audibly and write that down with a pen and paper. We have the show notes for a reason, so you might want to try what I did. Take out the live from start part if you're downloading something that's already archived, but you may need the cookies from browser part. You may need the remote components part, and you may already have had to download and install Deno with curl. That What it does, you don't see this happening, but it's solving a CAPTCHA in the background. So yeah, YouTube's been putting up these roadblocks. I'm determined to get around them every time. And I was very pleased that I downloaded a 6.1 gigabyte live event yesterday that way. So in the show notes. All right, next on a different topic. As a keyboard focused person, I am late to the compose key, but I finally decided to assign a compose key in Cinnamon in the menu. Now you can pick any key you want, but I chose the caps lock key because that is something I just don't use. Not really. I can't remember the last time I used it. So what the compose key does is it allows you to quickly write special characters with accent marks and numerical currency and foreign language characters without having to switch your actual keyboard. You can use the compose key, and what it does is it gives you a very quick and easy way to do that. For example, if you want to type the 1/2 symbol, which I use frequently, right? You hit, your compose key, in my case, caps lock, 1, 2, and then space, and boom, it types that little 1/2 symbol, right? And most of them are sort of intuitive like that. Like if you want to do an Enye, it's like N with the tilde over it, certain things like that. So it's a very convenient way to do that. If you're a keyboard focused person,
Enye, but you can't say tack.
Yeah, well, tack is, I don't know, man. I don't know where that came from. Enye's, I like Enye's a valid word. Tack is like some newfangled word. We got dash or hyphen. When did tack become a thing? I'm sorry, I missed that.
When we started talking about computers.
Yeah.
Because the hyphen and the dash is used when we're talking about writing something in plain English. And the tack is more of a I don't know, developer syntax, I suppose, when you're because I think there was a delineation between talking about things that were written and commented out in like a script or in code, and so the tack was used to describe something that is directly a command or code that's executing. This isn't just something we write for people to read. This is something that indicates that it's what follows is a switch in a command. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's the first I heard of it being explained that way, so it makes a little more sense. But as it is, you can go to the show notes and copy and paste, whatever you want to call it, it's there. Anyway, so aside from the compose key, I don't know how many people use Unicode, but it's the alternative way to type special characters. Now, it's a little more obscure because you got to type on Linux. You got to type Control-Shift-U, and and then type some obscure series of alphanumeric numbers like 2122 or 0BD, whatever. Usually about 4 numbers. Now, why would you want to do that? You might say the reason is because Unicode allows you to put not just foreign currency or mathematical characters like half or trademark symbol or things like that, but it allows you to effectively create little characters that look like emojis. A fire, a flame, a kangaroo, whatever you want to do. It's all there. There's thousands and thousands of Unicode characters that are full color, and they're capable of being rendered even in most places where only plain text is normally readable. For example, in Markdown document. So I discovered this and I started using it to save space. So I keep, most of my notes are just plain text, right? Some of them are task lists, but most of them are just plain text lists of things. But if you want to add some cool bits of color and some symbols, in the form of what effectively look like emojis, like you want a white check mark on a green background to indicate yes or go. You want a red no entry sign to indicate no or wrong. You can easily do that, and I find that you can those will render everywhere in a browser, in markdown files, and it saved me a lot of time and space in one of my particular documents. And you could even invoke those. Now, you don't want to be memorizing thousands of things, but if there's a few of them in particular that mean something to you, let's say you use a certain symbol, let's say you like the trademark symbol, or you like the flame symbol, or the check mark like I just described. I've also added them to CopyQ, my clipboard manager. So it's a simple matter of, hitting your key to launch CopyQ, hitting 1 or 2. If you've got it pinned at the top, then enter, and then it will print that special, colorful, emoji-like Unicode symbol into any document you want. So if there's a few of them that you use, that's a great way to save them and invoke them without memorizing an obscure code. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because I found it really cool that I managed to use that in some of my documents to add that bit of color. All right, now a rare moment. I'm going to talk about a piece of hardware. I purchased a laptop on impulse last year from Craigslist. It has an AMD Taureon X2 dual-core mobile RM-75. 2.2 gigahertz, and it has 4 gigabytes of RAM. I purchased it just to experiment with. It's actually in beautiful condition, despite being about 13 years old, and it has a 17-inch WXGA screen, 1440 by 900 resolution. Now, normally, I am a screen resolution snob, and I wouldn't buy something like that, but because most of my computers are 1900 by 1200, not 1080, but because this was something I just wanted to use as a backup device, and I liked the beautiful condition it was in from the ad, and it was the same in reality, I picked it up, and I was lucky because it came with a small hard drive and Windows and
Strikes
Has he
again.
paused now?
Yep.
Well,
Well, it's not just me then. It's not just me then.
Oh,
Oh, he's back. He's back, and this time he's pissed. Sorry.
This time it's for real.
This time he takes no prisoners.
that was a hit here in normally sunny South Florida. I'm back, right?
yep.
Yes, you
you're back.
are.
Okay, yeah.
You had a
Even
brown
with
out?
even with big battery backups, that does happen when you get one of those electrical hits that lights up the whole sky like it was daytime. Anyway, I was talking about this laptop that I purchased. I stuck in the 120 gigabyte SSD from my Sager laptop, and I wanted to try something else other than Linux Mint. I mean, it's capable of running Linux Mint, no doubt, but with Cinnamon and 4 gigs of RAM, I thought it was kind of light. I wanted to try something kind of underpowered. So I wanted to try something lighter weight, a lighter weight desktop environment, or a window manager, preferably with an operating system in the Ubuntu or the Debian family. So what did I do? This is an impromptu Bodhi corner. Shout out to Moss. So this is Bodhi adjacent. I downloaded something called MX Moksha. All right, with Bodhi Linux, which, by the way, I used to use on an ancient computer I used to have long before I was on this show, not being updated in quite a while. See the discussion on our Discord yesterday, due to the lead developer's illness and still being stuck on Ubuntu 22.04 Jammy Jellyfish. I decided to check out on a live installation this thing called MX Moksha. A developer took with the help of the Bodhi team, he took Moksha, the desktop environment based on Enlightenment, which is a very lightweight desktop environment that's more akin to a window manager in terms of RAM use, but it has a nice graphical interface. And he welded it onto MX Linux, the distribution, which is based on Debian. And this is actually quite new because it was based on Debian 13 Trixie, their latest version. So MX Linux comes with a full suite of installed applications and utilities. They have their own large repository of apps, including featured apps like the latest YTDLP. And of course, it's compatible with anything in the app depository, dev files, Flatpaks, app images, even snaps, I guess you could force on there if you really want, and pretty much anything else, right? So I also will take note that just like in Cinnamon and every other desktop environment that's worth anything, the super key works out of the box on MX Moksha as an application launcher. So if you type and release the super key, it will launch the application launcher in Moksha, the desktop environment. So therefore, I consider this a good spiritual successor to Bodhi. If you were thinking about using Bodhi, like Immutable Charlie was mentioning yesterday in the Discord, if you want to try Moksha and you don't want to have to set it up all yourself, this is another option. I thought it was pretty neat. So MX Moksha melding Moksha and MX Linux. And there is a link in the show notes to check it out. All right, now I'll take a sip of water and I will launch into the last pretty long thing that I play with. And I spent hours on this week. I wanted to try out.
So no blaming the length of the show on me this time.
What's that? Oh, the length of the show. Yes, the length. This. Well, clearly everything I'm saying is very important, so it's worth spending time on.
No,
so, Puppy Linux, Trixie Pup 64 Wayland. This last week, I decided to check out Puppy Linux after a couple of years of not using it. And for those who don't know, Puppy Linux is a family of Linux distros created from a common formula where the operating system is loaded up from squash files which is made up. It's made to work on a USB stick with persistence right out of the gate. It loads up in RAM and it uses a very lightweight window manager and a suite of very lightweight applications, which can be blazingly fast on older computers. It notably uses very little RAM, and they even have a 32-bit version. And you could use Puppy on computers with as little as 1 or 2 gigabytes of RAM. And there are multiple versions of Puppy that are either based on Debian, Slackware, or Void, your choice. And you can even have multiple versions of Puppy sharing the same USB stick or the same hard drive. It operates differently than most Linux distros in that sense. It doesn't take up the whole hard drive if you don't want to. You can just put it in a directory, and it'll open up from those squash files when you choose it from Grub on boot. So anyway, I saw the latest version of Puppy from January 2026 called Trixie Pup 64 Wayland. My very first experience using anything Wayland. Now, when I ran it on a USB stick, and again, it was blazingly fast, even on a 16 gig USB stick on this laptop that I was just telling you about, I realized that this puppy, unlike the other many puppies they've had over the years, uses a window manager called LabWC. I had never heard of it before. Maybe you haven't either, but it is a Wayland-focused window manager. And this is as opposed to JWM or Joe's Window Manager, which was the traditional, very lightweight window manager that were used in many classic and discontinued pups. So I realized that this opened up the possibilities of much better custom configurations and key bindings, because I am all about the keyboard shortcuts. See, here's the thing. The feature is hidden, right? If you go into on Trixie Pup Wayland, if you go into desktop control, hotkeys, you will see the settings to change your key bindings. And what's listed there are very limited, right? You can use Alt, Control, or Super keys as a mask, and then you could use the letters A through Z as keys. That's it. So when I looked at that, I said to myself, "Oh, holy crap! That's lame. That's worse than the old Joe's Window Manager used to be. It's worse than Cinnamon. And what if I want to use Control Accent Grav as my keyboard shortcut to open up the terminal, which is what I use? What if I want to use the press and release of the super key to launch an app launcher, which is what I use on Cinnamon. It's built in." I thought that was it. However, luckily I had the foresight to ignore the limitations that were there. And I went to the GitHub for LabWC, curious about it. And I realized that in their GitHub documentation, it explained how you could use the rc.xml file at root/.config labwc to customize the keyboard shortcuts to your contentment. So much more powerful and flexible than the GUI that it was showing me. So, these window managers are often controlled through .config files. So people who are real Linux nerds that use window managers rather than full-featured desktop environments are aware of this. So I think that's what compelled me to look at the documentation. So anyway, sure enough, I was able, editing the rc.xml file, I was indeed able to customize the keyboard shortcuts. In the documentation, it actually showed me a specific example of, customizing the super_L key, which is what the leftmost super key or Windows key is called in this kind of technical documentation. And that was like a light bulb went off, and sure enough, I was indeed able to configure what they call the super lightweight launcher that's included in LabWC, WOFI, the WOFI-launcher. I was able to sync those up. I was able to use Control Accent Grav to customize my terminal keyboard shortcut, and it worked. So now I consider LabWC, which I had never heard of before, now it's on the top tier. Along with Windows, along with Cinnamon, along with GNOME, along with KDE, along with Moksha, you can create that very important shortcut that I cannot live without, the press and release of the super key to launch your app launcher. Unlike Mate, which is in the dog pile, XFCE, which is in the dog pile for me, LXDE is in the dog pile. To my knowledge, you can't do that, and you can't do it with Joe's Window Manager either. If someone knows better and can prove me wrong, I'm happy to be proved wrong if you can do that. But yeah, so when I realized that, I thought, okay, now I have a viable super duper lightweight window manager that's usable on Puppy Linux, that has that kind of capability and customization for the very first time. And aside from that groundbreaking realization, I also thought that what was really cool about Trixie Pup 64, as opposed to the older puppies, which you guys may or may not be familiar with, it has not only does it use Wayland, but it has a much more what I will call modern, quote unquote, look. The panel, the icons, even the desktop shortcuts, they're not so cartoonish or cutesy like the old Puppy Linux used to be. Lightweight, to be sure, but they kind of look like an old Windows 95 with, icons spewed all over your desktop. It might have turned some people off, in my opinion, in the past. So now that I know that power users can customize the elements as I described, the keyboard shortcuts, I think it's pretty cool that Puppy Linux has a new spin that's based on the latest Debian Trixie. It has the ability to customize it the way you want. It has the ability to run on your USB stick. It's super duper light on RAM usage. It is compatible with all the Debian repositories, very importantly. Unlike the old puppies from years ago that had a special .pet, get it? Pet, repository that you had to use. You can just download things through apt. And so this brings Puppy into the modern times. And and then along with all that, the Puppy Linux community, they are very, very actively involved. And if you want to run a Linux, super lightweight Linux OS right off a USB stick, or you want to throw it on one of your hard drives, they're a very active community to help you. So that was my experience tinkering with Puppy Linux for hours and beating the system and figuring out how to assign the keyboards that I wanted, which were not able to be done on the Surface. And I would recommend people check it out if you like super duper lightweight operating systems. Have any of you guys ever tried it, just out of curiosity?
I've tried.
Yeah, I've run Puppy before.
Yeah.
It was a bit too light, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It looks very, very dated. At least when I used it, and it's not been recently. I'll be honest with you, because most of my hardware's been decent over the last couple of years. So I've not needed to look into it.
You should have him on DHD to talk about it, because I don't think anybody's talked about Puppy on there for a while.
All right.
Yeah.
Not a bad one, actually.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Be happy to.
Because there is still a use. There's still a good use case for lightweight distributions. I'm sorry. There's still lightweight hardware.
Oh, yeah,
out there,
definitely there is. No, definitely. It's just that, yeah. No, I agree generally. You're right in that there's still some hardware in which that kind of light distro is useful. But as I said, and I've said before as well, the devices are getting so powerful nowadays, and at least in the Linux ecosystem, coders and developers are good at optimizing stuff that even things like KDE Plasma aren't bloated or heavy on modern hardware. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah, the use case for Puppy is if you've got a USB that you want persistence on, it works great for that. Or you have an ancient computer with 1 or 2 gigs of RAM because it loads up in RAM. It's great for that. And in keeping with what Majid said, it doesn't have that really dated look. At least this version, the one I'm talking about, it doesn't have that dated look. It looks pretty much modern and like revamped. So that's all.
You should have a DHD that's dedicated to the smaller versions of Linux, like Puppy and DSL and things like that.
Tiny Core. Get somebody that knows how to get Tiny Core up and running. That.
Right.
Yeah, so that was fun, and I'm going to keep playing with it. I've got it on my 16 gigabyte USB stick. I'll keep it in my bag or my car or whatever. Take it with me if I ever need to, some kind of repair situation, or just want to log into a computer that's not mine. It's a great way to do it. All right, so last few things here, and I'll finish up this long show. There are. Majid mentioned Samsung. I have one Samsung device, a Samsung phone. I told you, Galaxy A53 5G, And there is an app called the Samsung TV Plus app. Perhaps you use it if you had a Samsung tablet or TV
Yeah.
or phone.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good streaming service. There's tons of content, movies, television programs, just like all the others, Plex and Tubi and stuff like that. But they do have some exclusive things. And they also have live sports and some other series I think are exclusive on there. So if you have a Samsung device, it's another way to get some content. Now, I was watching a live MMA event this week. They had it streaming. It's sort of like a third tier promotion. They were streaming it with Spanish language on YouTube. All right, so no problem. I was watching that via SmartTube on my TV. But they had a deal specifically with Samsung TV Plus for the English language broadcast. Now, I could not figure out how to send the stream or the screen from my phone to my Fire TV 4K. I don't think it works. Maybe I'll figure it out down the line, but so far I don't think the Samsung app and phone can talk to the Fire TV 4K device to share my screen or cast it to my television, right? So I had to do something a little bit goofy, but it worked. I just waited till I brought up the stream on my phone, in English, and the stream on YouTube on my TV, and I just waited till the bell went ding at the beginning of the round and just synced them up. And then I muted the television and I listened to the English, commentary from the phone while I watched the Spanish, the video full screen on my TV. So that did the trick. So there's my Samsung report. But yeah, if you have a Samsung device, you might want to check it out.
No, slightly related, slightly unrelated. I'm wondering, have you checked out the Roku channel? You don't need a Roku TV or anything. It's
I have, yeah.
Go to a lot of free stuff on there. I found myself going back to it a couple of times for some obscure things that you just plain can't get anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So if you hadn't, I was going to recommend it.
Yeah, it is. Roku channel is cool. Yeah, and you're right. You don't have to have Roku. You can pull it up on Fire TV or anywhere else. They have like channels and they have on-demand programming. They even have live sports and like second or third tier sports. So it's a pretty cool thing. All right, so I'm going to go on a rant about calculators now. On Linux Mint, you have it comes with the GNOME calculator, right? Just your calculator that's standard on Linux Mint, and it sucks. And I'm going to tell you why, right? When you are using a calculator and you type, 100 plus 100, if it's a good calculator, it will show you the subtotal as you're typing without you having to hit enter or the equal sign, right? The GNOME calculator forces you, on Linux Mint I'm talking about, to show you a subtotal or a total. You have to hit enter, you have to hit equal, and then it pushes those numbers that you input, to get to that subtotal up, right? It's ridiculous. The GNOME calendar looks nice, but I hate the way it works, right? So, because I want to be able to type, 100 plus 100 minus 50 plus 200, and as I go, I want to see the subtotal below without hitting enter and making those other numbers move up or disappear off the screen. So I wanted to try to find another calculator. Well, I went to the software store on Linux Mint, and there's a lot of calculators. Some of them are flat packs, which I didn't even look at, because who wants to install a flat pack for a tiny little calculator program? I did find KALK calculator, which I hate that stupid KDE naming. All right, take that aside. The calculator shows you the subtotal as you type. So if you type 100 plus 100, it shows you 200 right below. You don't have to hit enter or equal. You don't have to make the numbers disappear. That is the way a calculator should work. And because listen, the subtotals matter, right? The individual elements you're inputting represent something to you. It doesn't matter if it's a a price you paid for something, a bill, an invoice, money you collected, it's points in a game, it's wagers you made, whatever it is, those individual numbers matter. It's not just the total that matters. And you don't want to have to hit enter or equal and have your numbers disappear like a fart in the wind. So that way you can't go back and fix it. It's really annoying. So I hate the GNOME calendar, calculator, other than the way it looks. So,
what was that called?
KALK, the
Okay.
calculator.
It's the default
Is
one
in
for
the-
Plasma.
Yeah, it's spelled with a K, so I assume it's a KDE. It's not very big. It doesn't bring you tons of dependencies, but try it yourself. If you probably never thought about a calculator the way I have, now try it yourself and you will see what I'm talking about. You want that subtotal to show as you're going. And you could also notably, very important, you can go back. Let's say you input 6 digits and you realize, oh, wait, I made a mistake. It's 120, not 100, or it's minus 100, not plus 100. You want to be able to go back into that line and change one of those numbers. You don't, you've already hit enter, they've pushed up on the screen or disappeared. You can't do that. You got to start over. It's madness. So the GNOME calculator is a piece of garbage.
I just tried it in Mint, and it's missing a whole bunch of dependencies.
What, Calc? Really? It worked for me. I installed it right through the old software station, not the terminal or anything.
I did it from the terminal.
From what?
From terminal.
The terminal? Okay, well, there you go. Try it through the software, Mint's software station, and it worked. So yeah, to me, that's a huge deal. And by the way, the same thing applies on your phone. On my Samsung phone, they had their version of a calculator, and it did the same stupid thing the GNOME calculator did. No subtotal as you go. If you download the Google calculator from the Play Store, that works correctly, where it gives you the subtotal as you go. So try it yourself. Once you realize you will probably never want to go back. If you're a person, I assume we all use calculators at some point in our day. You probably don't give it much thought, but to me, this is a huge deal. And yeah.
The Flatpak works.
Okay. All right. Well, good for you if you want to install a Flatpak for a little calculator app, but the functionality is night and day different.
I think if you're on a GTK system and you install a KDE app that's going to pull in some Qt dependencies that you don't otherwise have, it's nearly the same concept as what you would end up with a Flatpak, because you're still having to go get. Of course, I say that, but this I just installed it, and yeah, it's a pretty good calculator. It does not seem to have an overt amount of stuff it needs to pull as dependencies compared to some stuff that you get. That's
it wasn't
KDE.
much. It's not as pretty as the GNOME calculator. It's a little skinny, and also if you go in to try to click on your list of numbers that you've input, if you scroll too far, it kind of scrolls off. So it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than functionality than the GNOME calendar. Maybe I'll find a better one at some point, but yeah, I went through quite a few to find that one. All right, and then lastly, because the show has been long, I'm going to finish up the one piece of media I enjoyed this week. I've watched 9 episodes out of 11. The Beauty is the name of the show on Hulu. It is a sci-fi body horror series starring Vincent D'Onofrio and Ashton Kutcher as an evil billionaire who unleashes a revolutionary drug on the world that makes people undergo a painful metamorphosis and then emerge from a gooey sack as a healthier, younger, slimmer, more beautiful version of themselves. However, the drawback is it makes them burn up and spontaneously combust less than 2 years later without follow-up booster shots. And as a complication, since it was stolen from the lab, it has also been transmitted as an STD after sex, and these beautiful people are having a lot of sex with unwitting people. So this billionaire sends his mercenaries out executing people who transmit this disease or benefit, depending on how you look at it, to other people before the product launch, because he wants to become a trillionaire, of course. And having this capability out in the world, not in his control, is devaluing his product. And he sends his heavies to compromise the FBI agents who are investigating him. So that sounds like something you're interested in, like it interested me. Check it out on Hulu.
This sounds very, very similar to an anime that just came out recently called Lazarus. You should check it out, Jim. You'd like it. Definitely watch anime.
Anime?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'm
picturing
inclined to
Jim
get into
watching
that.
anime.
I don't like anime.
I know. That's why I mentioned it.
See, what's
No,
a
but
Demi
it's
Moore
very
in
similar
a
storyline.
Demi
Yeah,
Moore
Charles,
was in a movie?
You're referring to yes, there's a movie with Demi Moore that has a similar body horror premise, not the same
Right.
exactly.
Right, the
But,
body horror part. Yeah, this is what I meant.
Yeah. There's a good. I recommend. The name of the movie is. I
It
can't.
escapes me too. It was out about a
think
year
of it off
ago,
the top
year and
of
a
my
half
head,
ago. She got nominated for a bunch of awards for it.
Yes, that's a movie with a similar premise.
Yeah, but definitely look up and watch Lazarus.
Okay then.
Okay.
So if we're done, have we got any vibrations from the ether this time? I don't think we have.
No,
All right then. And have we got anything to check this out? Well, I reckon people should check out Puppy Linux. Actually, I've just been looking on the website. It does look a lot more modern than it used to before. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
01 says that show you were trying to think of is called The Substance.
The Substance is the movie, correct? That Charles referenced. Demi Moore and The Substance. Yeah, I recommend the movie too, if you like that type of thing.
Okay then, so time for some housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you think we should be talking about, tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us mainly on Discord. Bill prefers Telegram.
Oh yeah, just like Jim likes anime. That's how I feel about Telegram.
Exactly. So our next episode will be 2 p.m. US Central Time, Sunday, April 12th, 2026, and there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Next Saturday will be our roundtable live stream. Please come and join us on the Discord voice channel at 2 p.m. US Central Time, Saturday, April the 4th. We've been getting more people coming on there, and it's really great, and we'd like to see more of you. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. Time to wrap up. Go on, Joe.
Well, if you like the sound of my voice, I'm on a couple other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which is at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, linuxlugcast.com. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org, or buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. Moss couldn't be here with us today, but you can catch him on Full Circle Weekly News. He's Moss at bodhilinux.com. On Mastodon, he's at Zyvola at hosttux.social, and occasionally he puts a show on HPR. Bill?
You can email me. I'm bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord. At WChauser3 at Fostodon.org on Mastodon. Also check out Linux OTC. I do that show with Eric and Majid. Majid?
So you can email me at drmajid@mintcast.org. I'm on at atypical_doctor at mastodon.social. I'm on atypical_doctor on Instagram and Threads, and I have the Atypical Doctor podcast and also Linux OTC with Bill and Eric, and actually Distro Hoppers Digest with Dale and Eric. Eric couldn't be with us today. He can be reached by email at eric@mintcast.org. Charles?
Yes, I can be reached at charles@mintcast.org. And I'm Mr. PDX on Discord.
And Jim?
Jim?
Yeah, you can reach me at jim@mintcast.org. I go by GNU to Linux on Discord, and you could also see a few episodes of my own Linux-related podcast at The Linux Shortcut on YouTube.
Before we leave, I want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Bill for our audio editing and hosting the server which runs the website maintenance, and Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. Archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hubstar for our logo, Londoner for our time syncs and various other contributions, and of course, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Clem.
Clem and Co.
And wrap.
All right then, guys. Thanks a lot. It was good fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've got to get going because I've got